In this last session of the Connected Learning, WordPress Photo Online Learning, I have David Campbell with me. Many of you will know him from last year's report that he did for WordPress Photo on Multimedia. Let me start by just asking you to introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about you and what you're doing right now.
Well, I have an academic background. For a long time I was interested in looking at how people and places were represented visually. So I spent a long time researching photojournalism, and 3 or 4 years ago I decided to go freelance so I could really investigate what was happening in the media economy and the challenge for photojournalism. So now I teach, I write, and I do some multimedia productions myself.
Now, I understand in the report you said that you wouldn't define multimedia journalism. It's a very difficult thing to define. But for photojournalists who are trying to move into this sphere, how do you see multimedia journalism as part of their future careers, as the media economy is changing in the way it is right now?
The thing we really tried to do in the report was look at the big picture, because the challenges for photojournalism are one example of a series of challenges that anyone who is producing or consuming information faces, and for journalism generally. So instead of just thinking about it as an issue for photojournalism as an industry, we wanted to see how it fitted into this much bigger picture of the transformations in the media economy more generally. And there what we're seeing is actually, I think we've reached a point now where we don't have traditional media anymore. It makes no sense to speak of newspapers as separate entities, television as separate entities, radio as separate entities. Everyone's operating in the same digital space, and that means anyone who wants to tell stories for what the organisations formerly known as newspapers, TV or radio were doing has to think about operating in that digital space.
Now, for photojournalists, what are their options now? So most photojournalists are thinking, I'm going out with my camera every day, things are okay, maybe not. What kind of adjustments do you think that they should be looking at as they move into the next sort of 10 years or so? I mean, what advice would you give to a photojournalist?
Well, I think what's happening now is that for most people in the world, increasingly, information is accessed through screens. Smartphones, tablets, laptops, computers and so on. None of this is to say print is dead or that print doesn't have a place, but the primary point of access for information is now the screen. So people who are putting stories together need to think about how their story is going to be accessed through a variety of screens, and then perhaps in a print experience, an exhibition experience, or some other form. So you want to think about how you are going to present your material so it can be accessed across these multiple platforms in multiple ways. And that might mean that it has to come out in a variety of different versions, it has to be linked up in particular ways, and someone who comes in at one point will need to be taken to another point so that they can get the whole story.
Now, we're in a newsroom here, and photojournalists who are used to these kind of environments, who are used to working in places like this, now should we start thinking about upskilling or changing some of their skills? What are the key things that you think that they can do practically in terms of readying themselves for these inevitable changes that are going to happen in their newsrooms too?
Yes, well, I think these changes are going to happen, and in fact I think for most people these changes have happened. A lot of the things that we talk about as being in the future are now taking place in journalism's present, so people are having to face up to it now. I think it's very hard for anyone to think about mastering absolutely every skill to the top level. But I think everyone needs to be aware of the array of skills that you need, have some knowledge of those, be able to do some element of those. So be able to write, be able to record audio, be able to understand how the web works, and of course have the high quality visuals, either still or moving, that they're best known for. And I also think that it's probably a time where people need to think about collaboration, because it is so difficult to produce constantly at the highest quality by yourself. Working with others who have skills in other areas is going to be a really important feature. Sure.
Now let's hope that this course will go some way to prepare people, certainly in video anyway. We've been doing a lot on that and video storytelling in what we call multimedia format. Now, at the end of each of these interviews, I always ask the person, do you have one tip? Now, I know you've been a secretary this year for the judging panel of WordPress Photo. You've seen a lot of photojournalism, a lot of stuff has come through. What would you say is the kind of one thing that you would suggest to a photojournalist? It might be practical, it might be kind of more theoretical or way of thinking, but what is the one tip that you would give to a photojournalist right now for what they should do in terms of, as I said, preparing themselves?
Well, I might cheat and give you slightly more than one tip, but they're all going to be related in some way. I think that when going out to do a story, you want to collect as many assets and forms of information in as many forms as possible. So even if you don't think you're going to yet be producing a long video or an audio piece or whatever, at the time you're doing the story, collect the audio as well as doing the high quality visuals. Collect the text information, make sure you've got the research right, and have more of those things than you think are necessary. Because when you get back to edit and you want to have options in the editing stage, you don't want to be thinking, I wish I'd got that sound, I wish I'd got that picture, I wish I'd spoken to that person. The more you collect at the beginning, the easier and the better the story is going to be at the end.
Great. Well, this is the last of the videos, as I said earlier on, the last of our video interviews, and we're moving into the end of the course where people should be doing their final projects, and we get to see the final work that people do, the exciting bit. But for now, David, thank you very much for coming and joining us.
Pleasure, thank you.